Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ba'd. So we're continuing with Imam Malik ibn Anas. He was born in the year 93 AH and he died in the year 179 AH. That is 179, wait, oh sorry, yeah. That is 712 CE to 795 CE. Got confused myself. All right, so Imam Malik, he was a jurist, a faqih. And his nickname was the Imam of Medina. So if anyone mentions, say, the Imam of Medina, they're talking about Imam Malik. Even though there's been thousands of Imams in the city of Medina, the most popular and the most famous one who got this title is Imam Malik. So the famous Maliki school is named after him. And the Maliki school in jurisprudence or in fiqh, it is widespread in North Africa, in West Africa, in former Islamic Spain. So when Muslims controlled Spain, they were all Malikis, the majority of them were Malikis. And when the Muslims controlled Sicily in Italy, they were also mostly Malikis as well. So about 20% of the Muslim world today follows the Maliki school, or at least is based in the Maliki school of thought. And so in terms of following, the Maliki school has the second largest following out of the four schools. And in terms of time, Imam Malik is number 2 in terms of age after Imam Abu Hanifa, who was prior to him. But they both lived around the same time. So Imam Malik, he was born in the city of Medina, and he spent his entire life in Medina. He didn't really like to go anywhere else except he visited Mecca for Hajj. That's it. He didn't want to go anywhere else. He just stayed in the city of Medina. He didn't want to have to deal with any other city. And originally his ancestors, they came from Yemen. So he's Arab by ethnicity. His ancestors are coming from Yemen. And his full name was Malik ibn Anas ibn Malik ibn Abi Amir. So it's a long name. This should not, he is not related to Anas ibn Malik, the companion, at all in any way. So some people may think because they have the same name in terms of his ancestry, they don't. That's a different Anas ibn Malik. But Imam Malik, his grandfather, was also a scholar. So he comes from a family of scholars. Unlike Imam Abu Hanifa that we saw previously, he was coming from a family of businessmen, of business people. So Medina, he's in Medina. And Medina is a place of knowledge. Since the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when they migrated to Medina, 10 years of revelation occurred in the city of Medina. And when the companions, the Sahaba, started moving to different places, like in Kufa and other, in Damascus, many of the Sahaba, they decided to remain in Medina, or they went back and they retired in Medina. So I know a lot of people, they have this idea, they say we'd like to retire someday in a city. Great city would be Medina. Mecca is very hectic, it has a different feel. Medina has a nice, comfortable, calm feeling to it. So a lot of scholars and a lot of the Sahaba, they used to do the same thing. They said, we would like to stay in the city of Medina. So there's a lot of companions that were still living there during the time, not during Malik's time, but right before that. And a lot of companions were there. So there's a lot of knowledge in the city of Medina. So Imam Malik, he memorized the Quran at a very early age, which was pretty common at the time. And then after he finished memorizing the Quran, and again, keep in mind, a lot of people, they memorize Quran today. Oftentimes, they don't go and learn the Arabic language then. And then if they learn the Arabic language or they already know Arabic, their studies are done. Imam Malik, it was similar at the time, but then some people want to study more. So when Malik was young, he memorized the Quran. He went, after memorizing the Quran, he told his mother. He said, Mom, I want to study more. So let me go to some class. I want to learn more about Islam and I want to take some proper classes. So his mom said, okay. So she dressed him. This is a very famous story about Imam Malik. So his mother dresses him in the nicest clothes, and she tied a turban on his head, and she sent him to a fiqh class. And she chose the scholar. So she said, you're going to go to one of the top scholars in Medina. His name was Rabi'a. His name was Rabi'atul Ra'i. And she told him, she says, you're going to his class and I'm enrolling you in his class, but I want you to go to Rabi'a and you learn from his adab before you learn from his knowledge. Adab means manners. And so what his mother is telling him, first of all, his mother is teaching him, when you go to class, you got to dress nicely. You're going to be decorated. You're going to have a turban. Like a turban was like fancy, especially for kids. You're going to dress really nicely. And then you're going to go. And her advice is a very famous quote in Islamic history. She told him, learn from his manners before you learn from his knowledge. Because sometimes you can go to a scholar, they have a lot of knowledge. They've memorized so many hadith, they have books memorized, but they may have a very bad temper. Or they may be somebody who's a little bit, not the friendliest or the nicest person with the best manners. And that's just the way human beings are. Some people who excel, if you meet like some professors, like the most brilliant mathematician, try to have a conversation with him, acts very erratic and a little bit weird and a little bit strange, maybe not the nicest manners. You meet the best scientists today, the best physicists, they're a little bit strange in their behavior. So his mother is giving him advice that when you go to a scholar like Rabi'a, who is a scholar, top scholar, it's more important than you just learn from his knowledge, you learn from his manners. And obviously, she knew that this is one of the scholars who has very good manners. And scholars were expected to have very good manners because they're viewed as role models in a society as well. Not just like a professor where nobody cares about how weird they are. Like you have a computer programmer or something, you put them in a cubicle. We don't care how they behave. As long as they can just perform their task, that's all that matters. No. She understood, and the Muslims at that time understood, the people who are teaching Islamic knowledge, they're also viewed as role models, whether they want to be or whether they don't want to be. At some level they are. So she is telling him, learn from his manners. And this is very important, because some people, they attend classes, they take Islamic knowledge, or they go and they read a lot of books, and their focus is on theoretical, intellectual knowledge. But then their manners, they go and they argue with people, they debate with people, they're very rude. You say, what benefit did that knowledge do you? You're not applying some of the core Islamic manners in your behavior. Something is wrong with that. So his mother was very wise, and she was motivating him. Yes, you want to go study? Go ahead and study. So he went, and he was pretty young at the time. So when he went into the circle of studying with Imam Rabi'a, one of his friends later on in life, he says, I remember when Malik was still young, and he came and studied in the class of Rabi'a, Imam Rabi'atul Ra'i, and he had an earring in his ear. And you say, well, wait a minute, what does that mean? He had an earring in his ear. So it was a culture, it was a custom in Medina for young kids to have an earring. Now, this doesn't mean that all the Muslim youth today, teenagers, would be like, hey man, if Imam Malik had an earring, I should get an earring too. It's not a license to go get an earring. But this was the custom at the time of the people of Medina, that young kids would be, for some reason, whatever reason it is, you can check with the historian, young kids would have an earring. And then they would remove it once they get older. So this friend is remembering when Malik was young, he joined the circle of Rabi'a and he started studying at that early age. Now Malik was somebody who was very motivated. He had this intrinsic motivation, but everyone has a different motivation. When we talked about Imam Abu Hanifa, we talked about how his motivation came when one scholar visited him one day. He accidentally ran into him and he said, someone is pretty smart. You shouldn't waste all this in just business. You should go and attend the classes of scholars. So Imam Malik had a different story of how he became motivated to go and start studying fiqh and hadith. So he tells the story himself. He said, I had a brother who was the same age as Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, meaning the brother was older. And he says, my father one day asked us a question, and my brother answered the question correctly, and I answered the question wrong. And my father told me, because he expected me to do a little bit better. So my father said, did the pigeons distract you from searching for knowledge? And so this is like, one of the things that kids used to play with. They used to play with pigeons. Maybe they had like a pet pigeon or something like that. So he would be playing with some birds. And so his father is basically saying, your brother got it right. You should have gotten it right too. Are you so busy playing with toys and pigeons and other things that you couldn't even focus and you couldn't pay attention to remember this one point? And so Malik says, I got mad. I got mad because of what my dad said, but I got mad at myself that I didn't know the answer. And I decided at that moment, I am going to dedicate myself to studying really, really hard so something like this never happens. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm supposed to know something and I don't know it, and then I get embarrassed and I get humiliated. It's not going to happen to me again. So he became, according to his own story, that's one of the incidents that really motivated him. It was actually anger. He was motivated by anger and said, how could I mess up? He was mad at himself. He said, I'm never going to let this happen again. So he eventually later on joined the class of another scholar by the name of Ibn Hurmuz. And he said, I stayed with Ibn Hurmuz for 7 years and I didn't go to anybody else afterwards. And this is what he used to do. He was so dedicated, he wanted to have 100% attention of the teacher. So he says, I used to put some dates in my sleeve secretly. So they used to wear long sleeves at the time, right? And he said, I would put some dates in my sleeve secretly like this, and I would go to the scholar's house, Ibn Hurmuz's house, and his children were there, and his children are outside. So I would go and sneak the dates, and I would give it to his kids. And I would tell his kids that, listen, if anyone asks about the Sheikh, because the kids were like the gatekeepers and the Sheikh is in the back of his house. If anyone asks about the Sheikh, you're going to tell him that he's busy and he doesn't have time to meet with you guys. So he literally bribed the Imam's children with dates. He goes, you're going to tell him that my dad is busy, he can't see you. So then anyone else who comes to the scholar's house to like go and get a class or something, they're going to be turned away. They're going to say, no, he can't meet with you today. So he goes, I get to have the teacher all to myself. Now this is not a good practice. You should not copy it. At the same time, it shows you how dedicated he was to wanting to study, that he would bribe the children of the Sheikh so that nobody else, he could get one-on-one time with the Sheikh. So one day, Ibn Hurmuz, he told his servant, somebody knocked and they said, okay, well, the Sheikh was in his home and he was ready to go out and teach. And what students would do at the time is they would wait outside the Sheikh's house. And when he's ready, he would come outside and he would take a class or he would invite them in. So he was ready to teach a class. So he asked the servant girl, he said, look outside the door. How many students are outside the door? And she only saw Malik. There's only one guy there because everyone else was told to leave. She came back and she said, it's only that light-skinned one, like that light-skinned kid, that light-skinned young man who keeps coming. So Imam Malik was known for having very light skin. That's just the way he was. And so Ibn Hurmuz said, okay, let him stay. This guy is going to be one of the important people of knowledge in this community because he's so dedicated. He's always here. No other student seems to come, but he's always coming. He doesn't know that he's bribing the kids to send everyone else away. And so Malik was very dedicated. He used to come and he would wear a special type of pant. So he said, when I would go to my teacher, Ibn Hurmuz, his door, he had like something outside of his door. There was maybe some type of stones that were laid out. And in the winter, they would get very cold. So he said, I would put on special padded pants so that I could sit outside the door of my teacher for a long time and I wouldn't get too cold. He was like sensitive to the cold. And he says, then I would just wait until he comes out. And other people, it would be very difficult. But it's interesting, he would wear special pants that are padded so that he could sit on the cold stones outside his teacher's house so that he can go and study. So very, very dedicated person. I mean, he's going through difficulties because he's really serious about acquiring this knowledge of Islam. Imam Malik also studied with Nafi'. And Nafi' was the servant of Abdullah ibn Umar, who was a very famous companion, who was the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And he used to sit with them and study. So Malik said, I used to come to Nafi' for half of the day. And as long as the tree was shading me from the sun, I would wait for him to come out. So he says, I would have to wait. Sometimes you'd have to wait like an hour or two just for a teacher to come out, and you get a chance to, you know, meet with him and ask him some questions or learn some hadith from him. So Malik said, as long as there was some shade, I would just wait under the tree, waiting for Abdullah ibn Umar to finally come out of his home, and he's going to walk by. And when he came out, I would just leave him for a little while and pretend like I don't notice him. Just some guy coming out of his house, and I was just sitting there pretending like, yeah, I'm just chilling out, you know, under the tree over here. And then I would go up to him after a while, and I'd say, hey, you know, what did Abdullah ibn Umar, this is Nafi', what did Abdullah ibn Umar say about this question? And he'd give me an answer. And then I would ask him a few more questions, and then I would stop, because he used to get annoyed very easily. So Nafi', he was known for somebody he doesn't like to be asked too many questions, because a lot of people would come to him because he's a very important scholar who studied with Abdullah ibn Umar. So Malik was also clever. See, number one, he's patient. He knows how long to wait and where to wait for a long period of time in order to meet an important person that he wants to learn from. Secondly, he was clever. He says, I know this guy has a little bit of a short temper. He gets annoyed easily. If I ask him too many questions, he's not going to accept me and answer any of my questions next time. So I'm going to time exactly how many questions I ask him and then leave and then go and see him later on. So he's like, this is the way in which he's going to study. Another time, to show his dedication, Malik talked about how he studied with Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, another very famous scholar who, remember, Malik never left Medina except for Mecca. So Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, he was in Damascus. But every scholar would come to visit Mecca, and then they would also come to visit Medina. So Malik got to meet all the scholars from around the world whenever they would come for Hajj or they would come for Umrah. They would visit Mecca and Medina, so he would get a chance to meet different scholars around the world, even though he himself didn't travel to go meet them. He got an opportunity for them to come to Medina. So Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri is one of those famous scholars. So Malik said, I was at the Eid prayer. So they were praying on Eid day, and he said, this is the day when Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, he's going to relax. No student, he's not going to be teaching because it's the day of Eid. So he goes, okay, it's the time of Eid. So he said, I left for the place of prayer. He prayed his Eid prayer. And then I went to his house and I sat outside his door. He says, I heard him ask his servant, he said, go check who's at the door. Because he knocked on the door. So he sent his servant, go check who's at the door. So she looked, she said, it's your light-skinned friend, Malik. He's always known as the light-skinned guy, basically. So Ibn Shihab said, okay, let him come in, bring him in. So he came in, and then the scholar said, he says, it seems like you didn't go home after the Eid prayer. And he goes, no. He goes, well, have you eaten anything? It's Eid. You're supposed to eat, you're supposed to celebrate, you're supposed to be happy. He goes, no. He goes, okay, here, I got food. I'll give you some food. Here, take some food. He goes, I don't need food. He goes, then what do you want? Why are you here? If you didn't come for food, what are you doing here? He goes, I want hadith. I want you to teach me some hadith. So this is on the day of Eid. So he goes, okay, fine, let's do it. So Imam Malik says, I brought out my slate, because they didn't use paper at this early period of time. So before they had paper, they would have these slates, and what they would do, it's kind of like a mini chalkboard type thing. You write everything on there, and you can either preserve it or you can rub it off, wash it off, and then you can rewrite again. One of those little erasable, writing things. So that's what they would use. So he said, I brought out my slates, and he taught me 40 hadiths, and I was writing them all down. And after I wrote them down, I said, give me more. And he said, 40 hadiths, that's enough for you. If you can memorize these 40 hadiths, then you know what, you can come back to me afterwards. And if you can memorize these 40, you have a good solid amount of hadiths with you. And Malik said, I already memorized them. He goes, oh yeah, you memorized them? Give me your slates. So he took all of his stuff with the writing on it, and he says, go ahead, let me hear it. Imam Malik narrated every single one of those hadiths. And he was impressed, and he says, you know what, I want you to stand up in front of me. You are one of the people of knowledge. You have a rare gift of being able to memorize like this. So this was one of the incidents which shows his dedication. This guy's studying on Eid day because this is his opportunity to get one-on-one with the scholar, a top scholar. And then he has an amazing memory as well. And so his memory, his father understood what a great memory he had. And he liked to memorize everything that he was learning. So one day, his sister went to her father and complained about her brother Malik. He said, this brother of mine, he doesn't visit anyone. All he does is he sits at home or he goes to class. He doesn't socialize with anybody. And so the father responded to his sister. He says, my daughter, he's memorizing the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, leave him alone. He is doing something that is more important than socializing. So let him do what he's doing because he's gifted like that. So Malik had this dedication. Malik had a great memory. Now, what was his occupation? So Malik's, I mentioned before, Imam Malik's grandfather was a scholar as well. He was a scholar in Islam. But his father was not. So his father just went into business and he had the profession of making arrows. This was his family business. So he would make arrows and he would sell them, and he was specialized in that. And so Malik didn't follow the profession of his father, which was making arrows. Instead, he went back and followed what his grandfather was doing. He was going to become a scholar like his grandfather. And his brother also wanted to become a scholar as well. So both him and his brother, they both became scholars, but they also went into business together. So early on, him and his brother, they used to attend classes, and him and his brother, they decided to go into the cloth trading industry. So they would go and they would buy and sell clothing, different like cloth that people would be making, very similar to Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa specialized in silk. Imam Malik sold different type of cloths, probably maybe a little bit of silk, a little bit of other cloths that were available at the time. So they were business partners for a little while. And so his brother was much older than him. And later on, his brother also became a scholar. Imam Malik became a scholar. And in the beginning, because his brother, his elder brother, became a scholar first, because he was older than him, people used to call Malik the brother of another. His name was another. So later on, it switched. And because Imam Malik became more popular than him, they started saying another, the brother of Malik. They switched it around. So they would identify based upon the popularity, oh, you're the brother of that famous scholar. Later on, it became, no, you're the brother of that other famous scholar. So they were both scholars. And this is what he was doing for a period of time. When Imam Malik initially, when he was studying in his early years, he was actually pretty poor. So he wasn't making that much money in his clothing business that he was selling. And so one of his students, Ibn al-Qasim, he said that in the early years, when Malik was studying, he studied so much that he had to remove the roof of his home and sell the wood of his own roof just to support himself. And then he says later on, several years later, the world opened up for him. Meaning, what does that mean, open up for him? Meaning he became wealthy. And we're going to talk about it, why. But so in the early years, he struggled. He was not doing very well financially, to the extent that he had to sell the wood in the roof of his own home. I mean, that's a pretty difficult situation he went through, but then life became easier for him. So then later on, his same student, Ibn Qasim, he says that Imam Malik, later on, he had 400 dinars in his savings account, basically. He would keep 400 dinars with him. And what he would do is he would trade in order to support himself and make a living. So he had 400 dinars, like 400 gold pieces. And he would be consistently investing these into different businesses while he's teaching and studying. And this would be his livelihood. He would keep making profit off of this base capital that he needed to, his initial principal sum that he comes with. So that's how he basically supported himself later on in life. Now, in addition to the money that he was making from the investments that he had, he used to accept gifts from the Khalifas at the time. And so he used to say that there's no harm in taking a gift from someone who's a Khalifa. Now we looked at what Imam Abu Hanifa did. He said, I don't want any gift from anybody, right? Even especially from the Khalifa. Imam Malik said, I'm allowing and I'm willing to accept a gift of money from a Khalifa that he gives, because Khalifas would support the scholars. They would support poets. They would like give a gift to the poet. They would give a gift to like people who are excelling in some field. This is just what they would do because they had a lot of money and control or whatever. So he said, there's no harm in taking a gift from the Khalifa, but there's some doubt about taking gifts from the people who are under them. Now, what does he mean by that? He said, if you take a gift from a governor or some lower level official, that may not actually be the money that belongs to them. So it may entail some type of bribery. But if you're taking from the Khalifa who's in control of everything, you can't say that he hasn't reported this to his manager, because he's the manager. He's the highest manager. So he says, I'm fine with that. So Harun al-Rashid, at the time, one time, he was the Khalifa. He gave Imam Malik 3,000 dinars. And he accepted it. And so one of his students asked him, he said, Abu Abdullah, how could you take 3,000 from Amir al-Mu'mineen, from the leader of the believers? How could you take this money from the Khalifa? You shouldn't do that. Like, that's not good. So Imam Malik said, if that is the amount which the Khalifa would have given if he had a righteous and a just Imam who is fair and good to people, I don't see any harm in it. Basically, he's saying, if I'm a just and righteous person, he's not saying he is. He's saying, if I am a just and righteous person, and if the Khalifa is gifting the people who are righteous and leading people in the right direction, influencing and affecting society in the right direction, I see no problem in taking this money from the Khalifa, because I'm doing an important job and the Khalifa is rewarding me for doing my important task. So he's basically saying, well, I have a good intention, and I'm not going to allow accepting this money to prevent me from speaking the truth when I need to speak the truth. If I see the Khalifa doing something wrong, he's not going to be able to buy me. There's no concept of scholars for dollars with Imam Malik. So Imam Abu Hanifa was of the opinion or of the view that I'm not touching a single dollar from any of the rulers, even if it's the Khalifa, because I don't want to be tested with that, and I don't want to be used as a tool by the government for their views or whatever. Imam Malik said, I'm okay with it because I know my own intention. I'm not going to let it affect me. But at the same time, he was afraid for other people. So he used to be asked sometimes, he says, you know what, I was going to take this gift from one of the sultans or one of the governors. They wanted to give me a gift, or the Khalifa wanted to give me a gift. Imam Malik would tell his other students, don't take it. So then they would say, but you take it. So he said, you're telling me not to take it, but you take it. And so he'd say, do you want to burden me with my mistake and your mistake? And what he means by that is, I'm taking it, I have a good reason for taking it, but it's not the best thing. I would prefer if I didn't take it, but I did. I'm worried about you. You should focus on protecting yourself, and I'm just trying to give you good advice. And so this is his general perspective on taking gifts from the rulers or leaders. So Malik was somebody known as one of the scholars in history who liked luxurious things. This was, Imam Abu Hanifa used to wear nice clothing, we talked about that, and good strong perfume. Imam Malik liked luxuries, let's just put it that way. And so he used to like to wear very good garments from Aden, from Khurasan, and he used to wear a special type of white Egyptian garment, which was a very nice quality at the time. They had very top level, it's like, imagine the Italian clothing at the time. He used to like musk and used to like good expensive perfumes. And he used to say that I don't like anyone where Allah, I don't like it when Allah gives blessings to somebody and then you don't see the traces of the blessings of Allah on that person, especially on the scholars. So he's basically quoting a hadith. We talked about this hadith before, that Allah likes to see the blessings of Allah being spent a little bit on yourself. But Imam Malik takes that and says, especially on the scholars of the religion. I want to see them looking nice, dressing nice, kind of like when we saw Imam Abu Hanifa criticize one of his students for not dressing properly. Imam Malik, in terms of his diet, he used to like to eat really good quality food. So he would not eat the cheapest, lowest type of food. He wouldn't be extravagant, but he used to eat a lot of meat. And so meat maybe used to be a little bit cheaper in this area where he was in Medina, because more, farmland. But he used to eat 2 dirhams worth of meat every single day. And at that time, that's a lot of meat. So he liked meat and he enjoyed it. And he used to go and pick different types of food. And he liked bananas, which were pretty rare and expensive at the time. And he said, bananas, there's nothing closer to the fruit of Jannah than bananas. So he loved them so much. It's like, this has got to be something that's in Jannah. And in his house was really nicely decorated. So his house had very nice furniture, a lot of decorations, carpets and cushions and everything like that. And he felt that having this stuff would kind of give him peace and calm, and he liked to have everything very neat and orderly. That's just the type of person that he was. So this is Imam Malik. He becomes a very important scholar. He starts teaching and giving fatwas inside the masjid of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Now, some stories, they say that he started teaching and giving fatwas at the age of 17. They said he's one of the youngest muftis at the time. This is actually kind of a weak claim. There's a lot of counter evidence to this, so I think this is not a strong claim based upon so many other factors, but I'm not going to get into that. But later on in life, he eventually was allowed to teach in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. And the place that he used to sit to teach was the same place that Umar ibn al-Khattab used to sit for consultation and judgment when he was the Khalifa. So he had a pride and honor in saying, I'm getting to sit in the same spot that Umar used to sit when he was the Khalifa at the time. And then the house in which he lived, he actually occupied the home of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, who was a very important companion. But we saw that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud had moved out of Medina. Does anyone remember where he moved to? Kufa. It's very important because he's the main source of knowledge for Imam Abu Hanifa in Kufa. So he's the most important companion and the most important source of knowledge for the entire Hanafi school of thought. And what's interesting is who's living in his old house. Imam Malik is living in his house. And he's saying, I have the honor of being able to teach where Umar ibn al-Khattab sat in the masjid, and I have the honor of being able to live in the house of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud where he lived. So he really respected these symbolic things. And we're going to see this a little bit more. This was part of his personality. He was a very particular person, and he loved he loves luxuries, he loves very symbolic things like this. So we're going to see a little bit more. Imam Malik is a very serious teacher. So in general, he doesn't laugh a lot. He's generally pretty serious. And when he's teaching, he becomes a completely different person. He becomes very serious. So one of his students, they said, when Malik was with us, it was like he was just one of us. He was very casual, and when he speaks, he's very nice and he's friendly. We respected him a lot, but he was very casual with us. But as soon as he starts teaching hadith, we were just in awe of him, because he taught in a way like he doesn't know who we are. We don't even recognize who he is. He just becomes a completely different person. Why? Because he has so much respect for hadith, because it's the words of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So his face would change, and because he would teach fiqh different. When he would teach hadith, he would take it so seriously. He's saying, we don't play around, we don't joke around. He was very serious when he taught. And we're going to see this from a few more instances. One time, Malik, he was asked, have you studied with Amr ibn Dinar, who was somebody who would be narrating hadith as well? So have you taken hadith from Amr ibn Dinar? Imam Malik said, no. So why? Because one day I saw him, he was teaching hadith. He was teaching a class of hadith, and the people around him, they were standing up and writing down the hadith. And he said, I decided I do not like to stand up and write down the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I won't do that. I needed to sit, but there was no place to sit. And I refuse to write down a hadith while standing because I think it's disrespectful. We should show more respect to the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So this is the way Malik was there. This is just the way that he was. One time, he passed by another person who was teaching hadith. His name was Abu Zinad, also a very well-known narrator of hadith. And he didn't sit down with him. And he just passed by his class and he didn't sit down. So one day, Abu Zinad, he said, I saw you pass by. Why didn't you come and study with me? He said, the place was crowded and I do not like to study hadith while I'm standing. I need to be sitting out of respect for the hadith. So he's somebody who he's like, I'm not even going to study with that teacher unless I'm able to sit down because I find it disrespectful to the hadith. Now, this is not in the Quran, this is not in hadith, this is his own way of showing respect to the hadith. Just like, for example, taking a copy of the Quran, in many cultures, say don't put a copy of the Quran on the floor. If you do, they pick it up, you have to kiss it. In some culture, you have to pick, if it touches the ground, you pick it up, and you have to kiss it, put it on your forehead to show respect that you've violated the honor of the Quran. Has anyone seen this before? Was anyone taught this? Or you were taught this? So many people that were taught this. Is this in the Quran? No. Is there a hadith that you're supposed to do this? No. But this is just different ways people show their respect and love for the copy of the Quran. Different ways that Imam Malik shows his love and respect for the hadith. He says, I will not write it while standing up. I will only write it while sitting down. So this is just one of the things he came up with on his own, but it's his own way of manifesting respect. It's not an innovation. It's not like a bad bid'ah or something that he's doing. He's not telling everyone else that you have to do it. This is my personal way of showing love and respect for the hadith. So when he would teach hadith, he also had some mannerisms as well. So one of his students, they said, when people came to Malik, he had a servant in his home, like most people did, and they went out and they would say, the Sheikh is asking you, Imam Malik, the Sheikh is asking you, do you want to be taught hadith or do you have some questions, like fiqh questions? And if they said questions, then he would come outside and he would answer their questions and give them fatwa, and answer the fiqh questions that they have. But if they said hadith, we came here to learn hadith, then he'd say, okay, take a seat, he's going to be with you in a little bit. So what would Malik do? He would go to the bathroom, he would take a bath, a whole bath, not just make wudu, he would take a shower, like a bath at the time. And then he would put on perfume. And then he would wrap a turban around his head, and they would bring a table, and he would sit down, and then he would go and take some aloes wood, which is oud, like those sticks, and he would have it burned the whole time while he's narrating hadith. And that's how he would teach hadith. So he made a difference between any time I want to answer somebody's question, yeah, no problem, ask me a question, I'll answer it. But if you want me to formally teach you hadith, and you're going to write it down, and you're going to say, I heard from Imam Malik, who heard from his teacher, going all the way back to the Prophet, this has to be a ceremony. I'm going to take a bath, I'm going to have my best clothes, I'm going to wear a turban, I'm going to light incense, I'm going to wear perfume, I'm going to sit properly and respectfully to show respect to the hadith. That's just the way Imam Malik was when it came to hadith. Now he had a few more mannerisms. We'll talk about a little bit and then we'll stop. He did not like theoretical questions. So we talked about Imam Malik is very picky, particular in his food, he's particular in his furniture and in the way he teaches hadith, in the way he writes hadith. So one of the things he didn't like at all, he did not like people asking hypothetical questions. So once a man came, asked him a hypothetical situation, and he said, you know what? You should ask about what exists, and you should skip what does not exist. If this is not a real question, don't ask me what-if questions. I don't want to hear what-if questions. So another guy came one day and asked him another hypothetical question. And he said, you know what? If you asked me something that would have benefited you, I would have answered you, but I'm not going to answer you. So people say, well, what if this happens and what if that happens? He doesn't even want to answer the question, the what-if questions. He hated it so much. And so his student, Ibn al-Qasim, He said Malik sometimes he wouldn't even give us an answer at all. And so his students, they would resort to tricks. Kind of what goes around comes around, right? Because Malik used to trick the kids of the other Sheikh, right? So now he goes, we would have to resort to tricks. So we would go to him and we would make it seem like there's some urgent situation and we really need an answer like right now. And then he would go and say, oh, okay, if it's like that situation, we'll give him an answer. And they would write it down and say, okay, that's what we do in that circumstance, but it wasn't an actual circumstance. And so Malik didn't like hypotheticals. Now, why does he not like it? There's two reasons. Number one, he's afraid of making a mistake. He doesn't like to answer questions unless he has to. Because if you answer too many questions, you could potentially make a mistake and then you're responsible in front of Allah for answering. Other people, some people, they love answering questions. They're not even asked and they'll go and answer a question. And so that's not the case of Imam Malik. He had a fear of Allah. I'm not going to be rushing to answer questions. I hope somebody else can answer it. Or if I don't know, he doesn't know. And the second, Imam Malik, he did not like wasting time. Because hypothetical questions sometimes can be a waste of time. Sometimes it's a good exercise. Imam Abu Hanifa was the opposite. He used to answer every potential hypothetical question that you can possibly ever encounter. I remember one time I was doing a research paper on wiping over socks. And this is coming from the Hanafi school. And the Hanafi school says that what type of socks can you wipe over and what type of socks can you not wipe over? So they went through every single material. Cotton, leather, wool, and these are the ones that are known. And then they started getting into some weird ones. Wood, metal, glass, and I'm just thinking, wait a minute. How can you have a glass sock? How is that even possible? A glass sock? So how can you have a metal sock? I mean, how would it come on and how would you take it off? Like, that's not even possible. So they would go and they would answer every single hypothetical question, and that's how they would answer it. But Imam Malik, he's like, I don't want to hear any theoretical questions. I'm not even going to give you an answer. You don't even deserve a response. So two different approaches to teaching something very similar. All right. The last thing I'll mention, and this is a good reminder for all of us, that when we ask, we should try to focus on questions that are actually practical, that we're actually encountering or going to encounter. Because sometimes I get really theoretical questions, right? Like, if I travel on Mars, right? If I'm an astronaut and I get on Mars, which direction should I pray? And the person is like, okay, that's kind of an interesting question, but if I look at the person, if somebody is in an Islamic law class and they're asking this question, I can understand. If I look at a person, say this person doesn't even know how to pray properly. This person doesn't even have the basics of Islam down yet, and they're asking about praying on Mars, and they're not an astronaut, or even studying to be an astronaut. They don't need that answer right now. They need a bunch of other things, but in their mind, they're asking about all these random things that are actually not very beneficial to them. So we should be a little bit careful about that. And the last thing we'll talk about, and then we'll conclude for today, because there's a lot more to his story. Imam Malik was well known as the I don't know Imam. He's someone who loved to say, I don't know, when he didn't know. So one time, a man came to Malik about a question, and he said, I have come on a 6-month journey to Medina from Morocco. I came all the way from Morocco to Medina, and there's no airplanes at the time. The guy's traveling by camel, doing some business. He said, my people sent me to you to ask this question. So Malik said, well, go back to the one who sent you and let him know that I don't have knowledge of that issue. So the man says, okay, well, who can answer the question then? Malik said, whoever Allah has taught the answer to. That's not me. I'm not one of those people. I don't know the answer. Another time, a man came from Morocco as well, very far. This was like the furthest you could travel at the time. A man came all the way from Al-Maghrib, the west, meaning Morocco. And the people sent him with the question. So he said, I don't know. We have not been tested with this issue in our land. So he goes, we've never encountered this issue before. And I've not heard any of the sheikhs in Medina speak about this issue. So I don't know. So you can just go back. And so later on, the next day, the man packs up his bags and everything, and he's got his mule, and he's got everything packed up, and he's leaving. And he goes back to Imam Malik, and he says, you know, my question, can you answer my question? He said, I told you. I said, I don't know. He goes, Abu Abdullah. He goes, I have left behind me people who are waiting, and they said that there is no man on the face of the earth who has more knowledge than you, Imam Malik of Medina. So Malik told him, he said, when you go back to those people, tell them that I don't think that's true. That's it, done. So we'll leave it at that. We'll take a break, and then we'll continue next week a little bit more about the life of Imam Malik. Are there any questions? Yeah. No, I don't think Imam Malik was obsessive about the deed. No, he's not obsessive, compulsive, or something like that. He's somebody who's just very dedicated to wanting to learn as much as possible, and he takes this knowledge very seriously. So that's it. Any other questions? Yeah.
You know the question I was asking?
The what?
The question that was asked by Imam. That they said, I don't know.
Oh, what was the question that was asked? No, we don't know. We don't know what question was asked. That was not preserved. No, we don't know. Any other questions?
I want to ask, when you guys say that, for example, you are being followed in North Africa or something, sometimes some media people, like for example, Mustafa Umar was also being followed in Egypt, or maybe some data in Indonesia. How do things happen? Because of this random?
So I'm going to follow Imam Malik and say, I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. No. I'll answer your question. So I think your question is, why is it that people in different countries follow these different schools? Yeah, so the reason the reason why these schools are prevalent is because their students and students ended up in those places. And so what happened was Imam Malik, some of his students and students, they went to North Africa, and they brought that knowledge, and his school became very popular in North Africa from that time, and it spread. In terms of the Hanafi school that we've seen before, it was officially adopted by the Abbasid Khilafah and by the Ottomans. So Ottomans really made it their official madhab school of the government. So they didn't force people to do it, but there was a lot of reward for following the Hanafi school. Because if you wanted to be a judge, you have to give a ruling as a judge according to the Hanafi school, right? So this is kind of what happened is when the ruling power is adopting one specific school, a lot of the scholars are going to be, or judges and people who have to deal with issues, they're going to be promoted, or they're going to be more popularized because that's what people are generally following. Because the government also needs a school to follow. If people come with an issue, I divorced my wife and we need to figure out child custody. Which school do you follow? There's a little bit difference of opinion about that. Oh, my zakah money is supposed to be collected by the government. Well, what do we do with horses? Do we accept zakah on horses, or do we not take zakah on horses? The government has to adopt one opinion when there's a different opinion. So that's part of the reason why these schools spread in different regions. Okay. All right, we'll leave it for next time. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.